Hey everybody, welcome. 12 o'clock. So I think I'm going to start this. I'm going to share the link with you in the chat. This is a Q&A. I'll be happy to demo some things for you, or you can play for me, or you can ask me questions. And it's specifically about the structured improvisation practice that I've talked about. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'll just present very quickly what I see as the keys to thinking about this. So 3 principles for structuring creative improvisation exercises. Number 1 is you have to have specific structures, like really specific. So one of my specific structures, for example, is play whole notes at a certain tempo in a 12-tone scale. It's so specific. It's okay. So I've got to play a note that's very specific, right? There's no question of what the structure is. So that's principle number 1. Principle number 2 is it must be within your ability level and comfort with it. And that means like that technically you can do it and theoretically it's comfortable. And this goes to the heart of why I think so many people get frustrated with improvisation, and really advanced players too. Some of the people that are here that are really advanced that I work with closely will keep continuing to try to be creative in a context where we haven't learned it well enough yet. And so the two don't go together. Number 3, the third principle is when you do these exercises, don't add anything to the prompt. So for example, going back to my example before where I was saying like I'm playing whole notes, right? A lot of times people they'll start to play the whole notes, but they'll be trying to make like a song, or they'll be trying to create some kind of harmonic form. They'll be trying to make it quote unquote sound good from a compositional standpoint. Don't do that. Don't add anything to it, because it creates this layer of judgment and kind of paralysis. And the whole point is to get past that. Because if we're judging ourselves while we're doing this creative exercise, it defeats the point. Like the point of these creative exercises is to not judge ourselves. And so if you go to a yoga class and the teacher says, okay, stand and breathe, but then you try to add something to it, we're just in resistance with the entire point of the process. Like the process is the point. It's like doing the process. Now, 3 principles for the creative improvisation exercises. Number 4 is a bonus in which I'm saying vary the type of structures that you use. So if you do one structure I'm playing in D major, the next one, do it with 12 tone, because we get attached to certain specific elements of the structures that we're doing. Like I'm playing in D major and that feels really comfortable to me. So I don't want to play 12 tone, but that's our resistance showing up, and it's again, defeating the purpose. So same thing. It's like with pulse, you do one structure with pulse, you do one structure without pulse. You do one that's in key of D major, you do one that's in no key. You do one playing long phrases. You do one that's slow. You do one that's fast. Every one of these the variance is going to be really healthy. So those are the 3 principles. And now I'm going to talk about the 4 categories, and then I'll be done and I'll just take questions. The 4 categories for deriving your structures and prompts. These are the ones that I use, but you don't have to use them. Oh, and I did miss one thing. I talked about using very specific structures. In general, I like to do that, but I did put that it's versus free and loose structures. So obviously, if you're just like, I just want to play whatever I want to play, great. That's the point, right? Is like helping you feel free. So if you already feel free and you just want to play whatever you want to play, then of course do that. But if you only do that, then it will eventually probably beg the question for you of, oh, I always do the same things. Maybe, right? And that's why having these specific other structures are helpful. Okay, 4 categories. The first category is feelings. Second category is techniques. The third category is musical elements. And the 4th category is anything else. And the way we derive structures or prompts for ourselves is that we use any parameters from any one of these categories, or we combine the parameters. Emotions, that's easy, right? It's either happy, sad, confused, frustrated, whatever. You can pick an emotion, and that can be like a prompt. It doesn't mean that you're trying to successfully represent that emotion of happiness musical. It's just a prompt. That's it. It's just a facilitation. And then techniques, it could be like, I'm going to play double stops, pizzicato, or I'm going to play with slides or string crossings, whatever. Musical elements, these are literally like the most broken down elements of music that you can't break down anymore. So that's like phrasing, harmony, pitch, tempo, meter, things like that. So for example, I might say, oh, I'm going to pick a meter. Let me pick 6/8. Okay, so I'm playing in 6/8. What's my tempo? Oh, it's 60 BPM. And that could be enough. That's it. That's 2 parameters from musical elements. And so I'm playing in 6/8 at this tempo. That's it. Or I could add more specificity, more like I could say, I'm going to use string crossings and I'm going to play no rests, right? And that's my structure. That's how I derive the structures. So the learning brain versus the creative brain, again, this is something I started to talk about, I think, but basically learning is slow and creating is fast. But the common mistake that everybody makes is trying to create over something they haven't learned. So if you're trying to play, and one of the questions I got was this. The person wrote to me and said, I would like ideas for making a solo interesting over a long dominant seventh, such as the 12 bars at the start of Caravan. This is a perfect example of the above, because to make a solo interesting over a C7 flat 9 chord for 8 bars, we need to learn it first. And usually, now can't say for sure, but usually when someone asks me that, I would usually say, let's learn the scale really well, or let's learn the chord progression, or let's learn the groove. And that is a practicing for learning. It's not creative, because we can only be creative when we're creating like within our comfort zone. So of course I have tons of exercises to help this person with Caravan and that sort of thing. And I gave an example here, but that's the point. This is what we always conflate. People are like, I want to be able to improvise over this bluegrass song. We want to start learning that. We want to separate time for learning. And what happens is people keep bumping their head against this wall, trying to play over something they haven't learned yet. And they're frustrated because they're like, but I want to be creative. I just want to be creative. And they're like, but I haven't learned this thing. So I really like to separate. So it's like, here is a space where you can be endlessly creative and within these structures that I've given you. If you do this 5-10 minutes a day, it'll change how you feel about yourself. Like it'll literally change everything. And then you'll feel so good about recognizing that I'm really creative and I can do this. And just the feeling that you get from being creative and listening back, that then you can say, okay, now let me take 15 minutes to really go learn the harmonic structures that are eluding me, or the rhythmic or the tempo that's eluding me, or whatever it is. And then I have one other question from Pearson that I will address, but I want to just stop right there first and see, anybody have any questions? Does anybody want me to demo anything? Does anybody want to play for me? That's what this is for. So feel free to unmute yourself and speak up or put it in the chat. Yeah, Ruben.
I'm at a point now that I retired from teaching 3 years ago, and I'm in a stuck level here. I've done a few weddings and stuff, but it's not enough. So I need to occupy and I play with the symphony once in a while, with Asheville Symphony, but I want to go to the next level. And now that I'm not teaching, I want to dive in this. And I was stuck for a while because I let it go for a while, and I'm trying to come back to it. So I've been working on Oye Como Va a little bit. And so I put together an improv that tried to put a lot of the elements that you have said before and everything, but it's in the A minor, and I want to get out of the A minor. I'm doing it. I didn't know, just to get, comfortable with it. I did an improv on A minor, generally speaking, but I just want to see what, what you could suggest. By the way, I bought this from Electric Violence Shop, and they were great a couple of years ago. This one, 84, is great. So I'm going to play it on this. I hope you can hear it. Okay. Can I put that?
Yeah, that's great. As long as your settings are set for original sound for musicians on Zoom. So if you want to play a couple notes, we can see if we can hear it, but you do need to have your settings set so that I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear that?
No. So what you need to do is you need to change your settings in audio for original sound for musicians. And so work on that for a second and I'll circle back around to you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Who else has a question? I'll address Pearson's question since he already sent it to me. And I think that it's a good question. He said how to retain a sense of musical self-esteem at times of feeling overlooked or even ignored by many musicians in my city. And I added a couple things to it, or I forgot that he had said musical self-esteem. It was just self-esteem was the way I answered it. And I'm just realizing that now. But I put a couple things in here. I said that when people ghost us, like you said, you're being ignored by musicians. So I'm thinking, okay, if people are ghosting you, if you're reaching out to people and they're just not responding, that's how I take literally being ignored. So I think that when we're ghosted, we can follow up or we can ask people why they're ghosting us. And then we can act one way or another based on their feedback. So if someone says, I'm ghosting you because I don't like you, then you can act one way or another based on that feedback. You can reject their feedback or you can ask more questions. Well, why don't you like me? You did this or you did that. And then if there's something that resonates with you, then you can change something. But if they say something that doesn't resonate with you, you can be like, whatever. Or you can just cross people off and move on to other people. If you're saying that you're being ignored by people, I think that I read into that you've actually actively reached out to them and they've literally rejected you. Otherwise, I think it's easy. Like everybody ignores everybody. I also said that another way to answer this question, and obviously you might want to step in here in a second, Pearson, but we have to ask the question, what is our self-esteem based on? If it's based on recognition of other people, you might want to accept that you just can't control whether other people recognize you. Or we might want to consider the premise that people don't give us attention because of how good we are, but rather because of what we offer them. We offer them something helpful, some kind of value, some kind of service, some kind of attention or recognition. And otherwise, I would say we focus on developing self-esteem from a place of recognizing ourselves and loving ourselves. So I'm not sure if any of that resonates with you, Pearson, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, those are great answers. And the challenge that I've been dealing with is, yes, I guess there have been some times that I've reached out and people have ignored me, but I never really, I guess I'm thinking more about, and this could be actually the core of the answer, is more of an internal sense that may or may not be grounded in reality. And for example, yes, I've played a couple of gigs with jazz musicians in town that didn't call me back. Does that hurt? Yes. And I guess that does contribute to it, especially when they won't tell me for whatever reason. And I reached out to one of them and I said, hey, can you give me some feedback? I'd love some feedback. And he just glossed it over and said, oh yeah, we'll talk about it. Never did. So that does contribute to it. But what I was referring to, I guess what was fresh in my mind was being at a jam session recently. And this particular jam session, I don't even know why I keep going, but it's because every time I go, I leave feeling worse than I did when I got there. And the thing that the last Monday, yeah, it was just, I introduced myself to the guy who was leading the session. I said, hey, I think I'm number 2 or 3 piano player on the list. Never got called up. Then I just kind of got fed up and went down the street, got a burger, came back. And actually the house piano player was there also getting a burger. He knew me, or he saw me. He had remembered me from before because we had connected before. He was a cool guy. And he said, yeah, man, I didn't mention anything. He just said, we just connected briefly. And then he shot me a text and said, get up on the piano. Can you please get up on the piano so I can leave? So I was like, okay, fine. I'll play a tune. So I went up and I played half a tune, and which I wasn't happy really about how I played on that tune, which maybe also be related. But then he comes up and I need to sit back down because I want to play all of you and sing all of you. And he didn't really ask me if I know that song really well, and I can sing it. I know the words. And that kind of, I guess I got, let's say, butthurt a little bit over that. Because especially because earlier there was another player that was younger than me and less experienced than me that was on stage for 4 songs.
Gotcha.
And she kept playing song after song. And I'm just like, there's other piano players here.
Yeah. No, I think I understand. I think like your feelings were hurt because.
And this kind of thing happens like every single time I go to this jam session, which is why like I resolved in my heart after that, just don't go back to the session because it's not good for me. It's just not good for my mental health.
Yeah. And I think I understand what you're saying. It feels like when we're in high school and we want to be accepted by the popular crowd. And for whatever reason, they don't, because we're not in the inner circle. We're not in that clique. And I feel like this is.
And can I jump in one more and just say, this is thanks for saying that, because in my last piano lesson, I cried. I pretty much broke down and cried most of the lesson because of this, because I'm basically grieving this, that I will just not get, and I've accepted this kind of, and still am working on accepting it. And in those phases of grief, that I will just not get the validation and the acceptance and the acknowledgement that I desperately want from the important jazz musicians in town. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Let me address it one way. So there's a lot that we, can go into on this. There's a lot of ways to look at it. And that's why I don't want to take too much time with it today here on this particular call, but I do want to follow up with you more about it. But I would say this. I would say that there are 2 very different things that we're asking about. Number one is specifically like your musical ability. Like if you go to any teacher and take a lesson, or you play for anybody who you actually trust to tell you the truth, then they can give you like a scorecard. If Ruben plays for me here in a minute, I could tell him, like, depending on what he does, I could say, you're not actually playing an A minor. You might have thought you were playing an A minor, but you need to go study A minor. Or I could say, hey, your bowing, one area you could really improve is like to work on your bowing. And there's a part of your bow technique that needs to be improved. And if you work on this, you'll improve that bow technique. And so Pearson, because I know you, and I've told you many times that I really admire your musical ability and that I've considered you at an extremely advanced level. So you may or may not trust me on that. It doesn't matter. But you got to find some place where you can trust and say, here's where my musical abilities are. I can play these changes this well, and I can solo this well. And here are the things I'm working on. But just to get an objective scoring of like your ability to do certain things or not to do other things is one thing. And it's completely separate from the politics of how do you influence people to bring you into their inner circle and want to talk to you. And there's a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And my dad made me read it when I was 16 years old. And I recommend you read it. But it's like the business kind of stuff that we've talked about with business coaching. It's just like getting people to buy, like me asking you to buy this product, this training, or join my membership. Like it's not, the 2 are not always connected. Like whether I'm a good coach is not the reason why people decide to hire me or join my community. They decide to join my community because I speak to their need in a way that resonates with them at the right time. Even Marlene, she hasn't been in my group, but I called her the other day and I was like, and I followed up with her like 6 times. But I didn't take that personally because that's what people do. They ignore us, but it's not about us. Mm-hmm. And actually, Marlene didn't ignore me. I'm not trying to, you know what I'm saying, Marlene. And so there's lots of things that you can do to separate that and deal with that anxiety around the fear of rejection and like the management of influencing people. But it's completely separate from your musical ability. And keeping them separate, I think, is really important because there are a lot of people with less ability than you that get called up to play 4 songs. And obviously they're not connected, right? It's just about that. So is that it all? And I would say that in addition to examining like the tactics and the strategies for how do I win friends and influence people, or how do I exert political influence, let's say, and separately from that, which is like its own just like skills and tactics, Separately from that, we have to work on our self-esteem. We have to work on self-love, self-forgiveness, being enough for ourselves, nurturing and soothing ourselves, which is easier than it sounds. Somebody like Shem, who's on this call, Shem was 40 years in the New York Metropolitan Opera. So he's a world-class classical violinist. And now he's playing in bands in New York City. And he offers up freely all the time that I'm not really sure how to play changes on this jazz tune or how to do this or what. He's very comfortable talking about his quote unquote, the things that he knows versus things that he doesn't yet know. The things that he's great at and the things he's not as great at.
Yeah, but it's nice of you to say that, Christian, but that was a long, hard learning for me. Pearson probably doesn't have to be so long and hard for you because you're already talking with Chris.
This is so interesting because what you're saying, Chris, is the very thing that I want to teach in my coaching, which is that there is another element to being an effective, not just a good artist or musician, but an effective musician. And when I say effective, someone that can connect with others, because there is a big element of having to connect with others, with people in whatever art that you pursue, and how you come across to people, how you are able to, and it, as you said, it starts from that sense of self-esteem within yourself. So this is great that you're saying this because it's really affirming what I already know, but forget. And the reason I tend to forget it is because I perceive that there's shortcomings in my own. I perceive that because I'm always comparing myself, right, to the greatest of the greatest. I'll listen to, you know who I listen to. We all listen to the same people. And then I like somehow am not them. And I overcompensate in my playing, and I strive to, because there's still an illusory part of my brain that's probably from just decades of programming. It still believes that if I only sounded better, if I only got in touch with that genius side of myself better, that people would finally hear me and see me and accept me. And that's exactly the illusory and wrong messaging that I want to teach people to not buy into. So it's like really good that I'm learning this, like relearning this.
I feel like I struggle with it every single day when I press send on an email and invite people. And I struggle with it, and probably most of the people on this call are older than you and maybe older than me too. And so they're probably all feeling like, oh yeah, I remember that. But also maybe they're even feeling that they can still relate to it on some level. And even hearing that people with such incredible ability like yourself in jazz, or hearing someone like me who is advanced in jazz and whatever, maybe that can give people on this call something relevant for them as well. But I already know some of these people, and I know that they're really, a lot of them are very mature in this way, emotionally intelligent, emotionally mature. Like I mentioned, Shem, who I admire for that reason in part, because he has this willingness to pursue his continuing growing in music, and he's going out and playing on the New York City jazz scene with people, and sometimes quote unquote faking it until you make it. That's what we all do to some degree. But I think in part, Shem, he talked about that it was a long road, but then I think that you see what's manifested there is in this very extremely mature man.
But there's also, Chris, if I may add, that Dale Carnegie book covers a lot of ground, and people go, oh, we went to Dale Carnegie, but they don't know shit. And we're not, there's this expectation that we're supposed to know this stuff, or it's the same thing that, Chris, you just wrote about, where you had on the screen when I came in, about learning the chord is a whole different thing than creating on top of the chord. And it was like, it took, it's the same thing. It's analogous. It's analogous. And especially recently in the last month, people are flipped out. Nobody's staying on their creative agenda. They feel pulled in so many different ways in a changing world. You're also dealing with those stresses, I'm sorry to
No, that's
something there,
great.
Chris, but it's,
Yeah, no, it's great. And if I can wrap this, just like this question, I would say, piggybacking on what Shem said, like treating this influencing people or making friends or entering the scene, treating that like a craft, like learning a scale, that it's got its own craft. It's got its own like strategies and tactics, like reading the books, like Carnegie or whatever. And you'll see a lot of parallels, Pearson, in the business conversations we've had. You'll just see that there's a lot of parallels. So I would continue to do that. And then separately, work on the self-love component, the self-soothing component. So, but I would love to follow up with you more about it. I just want to make sure, I want to go pivot and make sure I get some other questions here as well.
Thanks. Thank you. That was great.
Ruben, we got you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Who else has got a question?
Since nobody jumped in, I thought I'd volunteer to play or take part in one of these playing exercises.
Right.
So what do? I just play you something that maybe I've been working on that I want to expand on?
Yes. Okay, yeah. We can use you as a guinea pig. The idea is to give yourself a structure and to play over that structure. Now, if that structure is, if you're playing over a song, then we can just give you structures to play over that song. Is that what do you want to do? Do you want to play over a song or do you want to play over some other kind of structure?
Yeah, let's play over a song. Yeah, let's play over Love Is Here to Stay or a standard.
Love Is Here to Stay. I don't know the tune. Other people might not, but we'll hear it because you're a pianist, so we'll be able to hear it. I'm sure it's going to be beautiful. We can pick from any of those categories, emotions, techniques. Let's take techniques. I want you to play 2-note solo in your right hand. Everything is 2 notes. 2 like double stops is what we call it on string instruments. But for you, it's going to be a 2-note voiced solo. That's it. Show us half a chorus of that.
Okay. 2 notes just in the right hand, no left hand?
No, you can still, let's use left hand because I'm assuming it's easy for you and we'll be able to hear the song. And so everything you play in the right hand for your solo is going to be, it's going to be 2 voices at all times in your solo.
Sorry, when you say 2 voices, you mean not at the same time, or at the same time?
No, let's do it at the same time. So if it's like ba ba do ba dee ba do ba ba, there's going to be 2 voices moving, but it probably won't be that fast, right? So you have to go as slow as you have to go to play 2 voices in your right hand.
Okay. So we're basically dealing with 2 voices at a time.
Yeah.
And I can play any line, but as long as it's harmonized in 2 voices?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry for making that complicated.
No worries. Can you hear this?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I played more than 2 voices.
Perfect. That was great. So let's do one more. So this time I want every phrase you play to be 5 notes or less. And a phrase is dictated by, there's always a space afterwards, like a significant space. Okay.
Cool.
And it doesn't have to be 2 voices anymore, by the way. It can just be single line.
Okay, cool.
That was 6.
Got it.
5 notes or less every phrase, and significant spaces after each one.
Okay.
Listen. Beautiful. That's it. That's the idea. And you want to vary the structure. So as soon as you find a trend, so there's nothing wrong with what you did, but the reason I said use more significant spaces is because I observed a trend which was that you always had short spaces. It was beautiful. Nothing wrong with it, right? But it's, if you want to push yourself, then you just create a new parameter that has, I know you're already familiar with all this.
Yeah, but I love that you're thinking of it in a slightly different way, because you're thinking about how are we creative rather as opposed to how can we regurgitate. And I've been thinking about this too, actually, with in regards to improvisation. Is like when we want to get to a next level in improvisation, it usually doesn't involve learning more information. It usually involves how can I already be creative and comfortable in what I already know.
Yes.
And what do I know?
Yeah.
And so it's cool that you asked me about the 5-note phrases, because I've been practicing 5-note phrases, but I don't practice it enough. So like I'll practice it like one day a week, and then I'll forget about it and be like, oh yeah, I was practicing the 5-note phrase thing, and then practice it the next week. So I haven't been able to make much progress in that because I haven't prioritized it enough. Because there's all these other things, other items in my practice routine that I want to practice. So sometimes any of those items can get pushed off because there's just so much on my plate. But that's another conversation, I guess.
Cool. Anybody else have a question or want to play or want me to demo something?
Chris, can I ask you about something you wrote in the previous email about sitting in with friends in New York and slow was good, fast was not so good?
Oh, yeah.
And it was something about the speed thing that was revelatory to you. And because we were having a previous discussion about got so many people want to know how to play fast. And so I was really curious to hear more about that if you felt comfortable sharing about it.
Yeah, so they called this really fast tempo on a complex jazz tune in New York, and I crashed and burned. Some people know the tune. It's called Cherokee, and it was a super fast tune. And I know the tune Cherokee, but I hadn't warmed up that day, and I hadn't practiced playing fast tempos, and I should have known better to just decline to solo in that moment. Otherwise, there could have been other ways for me to succeed on a fast tempo without playing like strings and strings of fast eighth notes, right? Like you can play short phrases, but I just wasn't ready for it in that moment for whatever. See, man, I wasn't ready for it in that moment. And so I crashed and burned, which is fine. I forgive myself. In the past, I wouldn't have. In the past, I would have felt horrible about it, but this has happened to me hundreds, thousands probably of times.
The thing about warming up and what is warming up, like, and what if it's a like public performance and I thought I warmed up, but I feel like I never saw the violin before. That's the zone.
I hadn't warmed up to play specifically on a fast tune.
Right. Yeah, but that's, yeah.
Because I played a ballad right before it without.
Yeah, but that's not the same. That's not the same thing. Yeah. The same thing applies in classical, right?
Sure.
Oh yeah, the intro is beautiful, and then whoa, right. And what is warmed up would be like Pearson. What is being in where you're hearing what everyone else is doing, and they feel you making them better, right? What is that? How do I do that? What?
Oh, it's a great analogy because Pearson might be completely burning. His fingers might be warmed up, but he might not be emotionally prepared for this weird social dynamic situation.
I found that the warming up part is actually comprehensive to fast, slow, listen, shut up, right? Lead without leading, all of it. It's like a zone. How do you get there where it's like that happy place? It sounds stupid to say it that way, but it does feel happy when you're there.
Yeah,
like thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes even not warming up, but just having a list of do's and don'ts. If I just would have said to myself, if they call a fast tempo, I'm going to be prepared to say no. But I hadn't even done that. And so Pearson, like you could do that. If you do go, for example, I do this to myself all the time. Do's and don'ts. Okay, I'm going to this jam session, but I'm not going to do this. Or I'm only going to do this. So in your case, Pearson, it could be like, I'm not going to have any expectations that anybody's going to pay attention to me. I'm going to talk to these 3 people, but I'm only going to say, hello, how are you doing? It's good to see you again. I'm Pearson. And if they don't offer to have further conversation, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to be ready. It's like just having strategies like ready in your mind or I'm going to leave if I feel uncomfortable. And here's my exit plan. So I've got a wing person who's going to have a code or whatever. Did I address your question, Shem? I guess so. Anybody else?
Sorry. No, yes. Thank you. That answered. It was exactly the territory where I thought it might be, but I didn't want to make that assumption. Thank you.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get to Ruben here in a minute. But if we do, and I think this is really applicable for Shem, like we talked about, if Shem was playing this very difficult tune called nuages, and it's difficult specifically because of certain harmonic modulations, and it's like a long form and all this kind of stuff. And I played nuages probably 100 times wrong on stage before I finally was like, wait, I don't know this tune.
But the method that you took me through was so effective.
Right. Yeah. But what I was going with this was that, like, when you went to your gig, I said, but you want to know what you're capable of and what you're not capable of on the tune. And I was like, so here's some strategies to get through it. They're shortcuts. Here's other things to practice the tune long term. But just having the clear awareness of, I'm capable of this right now, but I'm not capable of that right now. And so the same thing could be useful for Ruben, because maybe he just needs that feedback. If he's able to play for us, then I could say, like, he may not know. He may be like, I'm playing over Oye Como Va, but does it sound good or does it not sound good? Or what I'm doing sounds good, or what I'm doing doesn't sound good. And I might say, your rhythm's great, but you are playing some wrong notes. And then that awareness might move him forward. So sometimes we need that help from somebody outside of ourselves, especially if we just don't understand. We don't know what we don't know. Ruben, were you able to figure it out, or? Okay. All right. We'll do a FaceTime call. If you want to call me like in 45 minutes, Ruben, on my cell phone, I put my cell phone in there. We can do a FaceTime call because there's no issue with this on a FaceTime. It's only on Zoom. Anybody else have another question?
Can I follow up on what you were just talking about? Hi, Chris.
Really? Yeah.
Thank you for chasing me, by the way. No, I was just wondering, because I've been working a lot on preparing mentally before playing and before playing for teachers. That's one block for me, that is playing for someone else that knows more than you. And I noticed that's a block that I've had for a long time. It's getting so much better, but I'm very aware of it. And I've been consciously really working on that and getting techniques to work on centering before I play. And so it often feels like I'm much more comfortable playing for people that I don't know, like in a cocktail or something, than when I have a lesson with someone. And so that's something I've been working on. And I've integrated in my practice this breathing and a lot of mindset tricks to just be in the moment and feel comfortable with what I don't know and try to think ahead what I don't want to do. So you just hit in the nail everything. The example you did, not knowing that piece and not being mentally ready for that. And that's what I've been trying to just integrate that into weddings and things that I have to be doing, right? Like in situations. So I was curious if you have a routine that you do before you practice, before you actually perform, like before you're actually going to play for somewhere. Do you have anything that you do consistently before to just get in that mindset and get into that place?
That's a really good question. There's a couple of things. One, I would say, sorry, I'm not having an echo. Sorry. One, I would say is that when we look at coaching, like getting coaching from people, just being really clear on why do I want to get coaching from somebody. So like I have coaches that I pay, and those coaches really motivate me. And I have a really clear reason why I'm playing for a teacher or asking them for advice about my business or about whatever, my let's say a counselor that I'm getting help with my relationship, or just individual counseling, or like whatever like that coaching is about. So I think getting clear on, if you're going to play for somebody and you're going to get their advice, the first thing is like, why is that important to you? Are you sure you want to play for somebody and get their advice? Do you trust that person? Do you believe that they're coming from do you feel emotionally safe with that person? Because especially if there's some kind of trauma or triggers for you around playing for experts, quote unquote, you're an expert at many things, right? Expertise is is bullshit in some ways, right? We're talking about that. Shem is an incredible expert, and also he's beginning on this jazz journey, right? We're all that way. Ruben taught for, 30 years, 20 years in schools. He's an expert. But there's other things that he wants to study outside of his expertise. But if you're playing for experts and you just already acknowledge that it's like traumatizing for you in a specific situation, then make sure that the expert that you're seeking out is somebody that you already feel emotionally safe with. And really try to answer the question, why are you playing for someone to get advice on your vibrato or left hand or right hand or musicianship? Because I think if we just have this idea of, I just want to get better, then that's really too much. But if I came to Pearson and I said, I want to get better at playing changes, that would be very specific and he might be able to help me with it. Pearson probably has a lot of expertise in harmony that he could help me navigate situations I'm not comfortable with. But it would be so specific and I would know why. I want to work on changes because I want to get better at playing changes. But for some of us, though, I think it's so confronting to even acknowledge that. It's traumatic. And we're not even ready to say, I need to get better at this thing, or I want to get better at this thing, because it triggers us on a deeper level, because we feel like I'm just not good enough. So for me to be able to say to Pearson, I want your help navigating these complex harmonies, it requires that I am comfortable enough to even acknowledge that for myself. I don't know. That's what comes up for me right off the top, because I would be afraid for you that if you're investing so much meaning in your skill level at this or that or whatever, that it would just be this breakdown for you. So that's one thing that comes up. Otherwise, the other answer is just, all the performance psychology techniques like warming up, like you asked about. But what comes up for you around that? That's a question. What comes up for you, Marlene?
Sorry. No, I think you totally said it. And I think in that sense, I have it very clear, like why asking for help now is just so different. For example, when we first met, like 2-3 years ago, the reasons why I was, the whole general, I want to get better, but not knowing at what or not knowing why, that was very different. I think now is very clear, okay, where I can actually get better and for what reasons, very clear compared to 2-3 years ago, for example. So that makes sense, everything you just said. And I think in general, it's just feeling really comfortable. I think I am beginning to feel really comfortable with wherever I'm at and being able to be vulnerable in front of other people because I'm just working on something that's new and because it's just what it is. For example, I don't know, if it's working on a clave or something that's difficult for me that I've never done, I feel better now to just come and say, I don't know this, and it's okay to do it even not right in front of whoever I'm trying to play. So it makes sense. Everything you just said makes total sense. And I was just wondering how once you are actually very comfortable with something, like you in particular, the performing, the example you just gave, you've played that song many times, but maybe mentally you were not in that moment ready for playing fast. So like when you're already in that situation, that you're already, I wasn't ready and I'm here and I have to do it. Then how do you recover? That's another interesting thing. You're already not ready. You're there, you're not ready, and you're playing and you're maybe through the process doing whatever you're doing and you're realizing you're not ready. How do you bring yourself back to say, okay, this is what it is, and I'm in the moment performing, and how do you pull yourself back together after the fact? That's another question that I find interesting. Maybe you can.
Yeah. After the fact, like, how did I forgive myself and not shame myself for making a fool of myself on stage in front of people that idolized me and put me on a pedestal where I'm supposed to be flawless. I'm supposed to be one of the world's greatest jazz violin players. And here I just train wrecked on this song in front of my former students. They tell me that I'm their hero. I think I've done a lot of self-work in the last few years about soothing myself, and it's come from therapy. I just don't have an easy thing but to say about it. But and to be honest with you, I've come to accept myself as being a more Just be okay that I'm just a guy and I'm not like, I don't have to be this quote unquote rise to some godlike expectation or standard. And that I can derive meaning for who I am from other things. The fact that I'm a good dad, the fact that I love my clients, that I try to give the best that I can for them and I try to improve. And that's taking a page out of books from people like you and Ruben, who are teachers and who I respect so much. And in a way, there's probably a flipped thing for that for you and Ruben, people who have spent so much time teaching and now want to work on your playing. Maybe I'm just making that up. I would ask you this question, Marlene. Do you play your violin for 10 minutes a day? Because I think that if it's important to you to work on your playing, then I would say, and that's part of what this improvisation training is supposed to provide you. It's do 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day of playing the violin. Because if you don't play the violin 10 minutes a day, then by virtue of your actions, you're saying, I don't want to play the violin. Or you're showing that there's like a disconnect and that there's a resistance.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly what I mean, like in my case, I feel really good right now where I am precisely for that reason, because you can't make changes that really embracing and willing to invest on if certain, I may have a delay. My internet seems
You're good.
funky. No, exactly. That's my whole realization and investment on myself right now is precisely that, to make space for it, right? If you don't make space for playing, it doesn't matter how much you want to do it. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, I hear you very clear there about playing daily. That is part of what I'm trying to do more and not feel guilty if it doesn't happen, because obviously life happens too. But I think for me, it's okay. If it's not working, why is it not working, right? Like, what do I shift so I can fit it in? And I think it's going pretty good. It's feeling more part of my life and part of not just preparing for teaching, but like actually playing something that I'm interested in learning and improving. Yeah, it's a work in progress, but it's consistent. So I'm happy with that part. At least it's consistent. And more easy. Like, I don't feel so avoidant maybe before because you're not as good as you wanted to be. Like that mindset thing that sometimes stops you. That's not there anymore. So that's good. And yeah, I guess to answer your question, at least 10 minutes, I'm doing that. So that's good.
Whatever it is, if it's 5 days a week, 10 minutes, but like that, I feel like that's a step. And that's what I'm trying to do with the Creative Strings Academy, is give people a safe space and that slight little nudge to, hey, show up and you can be muted and just play. And we're going to make it friendly as possible. Because I find that, as you said, the avoidance, I find that happens for me, and I think it happens for a lot of people. And that's why I think this is so deeply psychological, our relationship with our practice. For a lot of us that avoid it, but then we're avoiding the avoidance, and it's creating this deep disconnect in our own belief in ourselves. And that's what I want for you more than anything else, is for you to have the deep belief that you are enough.
Yeah, thank you.
And even if people say, I'm done playing music, I think that's okay. If people say, I don't want to practice, I'll still teach, but I don't want to practice at all. But just coming to a firm place with it. Yeah, Pearson?
Is it okay if I add to that for Marlene? Marlene, what I've noticed for myself is that I, like in my last lesson with my piano teacher who lives in LA, and he's fantastic, I was like bawling my eyes out, and he was just like, okay, you can try this, you can try that, you can try this and that. And I was like, yeah, I've tried all of that. And I didn't really feel connected to him in that moment, because I felt like he was trying to fix it from a place of, this is what you can try with your playing. But what I realized for me is, it's not what I'm wanting now from a teacher or from a mentor, a coach, a guide, whatever, is to help me to be okay with myself, to help me to be okay with what I know how to do. Because I know that I know how to do things, and I'm sure you do too. I know you do, obviously, and we all do. So I think part of the problem is like thinking that it's somehow not enough or it needs to be better, and that's my problem. And for me, that includes practicing. Like, I love practicing now. I practice at least 2 hours a day now because it helps me to feel better about not necessarily my playing, because I might go to a gig and not sound better. I might not sound any better. It's like when you go to the gym, you work out for an hour, you come out looking the same. But I know that it helps me somehow feel better about myself, and it helps me also feel more excited about music and about life. Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but that's where I'm at now. Is I don't necessarily want music instruction now. I just want someone to help me like accept what I know how to do already. I don't know. Hopefully that helps.
Cool. Thanks. Anybody else have a question you'd like to bring? Or, yeah, Petra.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me there? Okay. I really wanted to play something, but I don't really dare to play some jazz standard.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to do that. Let's have you play some.
Could you just give me some?
Yeah, I'll give you. This will be a good one for Marlene too.
So I hope it's working then.
Let's hear. Play a couple notes.
Like.
Works. Okay. Yeah. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to play half notes in a 12-tone scale. With all that means is just any notes, but it's going to be half notes. So it's going to be like,
okay.
It's just recurring half notes. Any notes. Don't add anything to it. Just do it. 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay.
Beautiful. Right. Nobody sounds like Petra. And that to me was a beautiful musical moment to behold.
Thank you. What did I want to say about the fear of playing? And I'm playing in this jazz group, which is a group of students from the music academy. And some of them are very good and they have groups and they play. And I just came and the teacher said, okay, I had to play something. It didn't go very well, the mini audition. And I said, okay. He said, oh, no, anyway, I'm taking you because I think it's nice to have a violin. So that didn't give me much confidence. But then I've been playing with them for a year. And I was all the time, I'm scared when I go there. And we had to do a concert as well. And what I did is I practiced some solos over the accompaniment. And then I listened to them and I wrote down what I thought was good. And so I prepared really. But then somebody made a recording, but I never got it. And some people said, yeah, that's quite nice, but as if something wasn't there yet.
Right.
And I have no idea what I did.
Yeah, you couldn't without a recording. And that's why recording is so important.
But I'm recording myself a lot now. And I listen back to it, but as I wrote, it's difficult to have other people listen to even to the recordings. I think they which are good. So it's this thing I'm really struggling with. And in other contexts, like in the chamber music, I play some quite often, and I always have stage fright, but I can manage it and I feel good. And I would like to feel good when I do the improvisation. I don't know. This is just what I wanted to say.
So how did you feel doing that improvisation?
That was okay, because that was easy.
Right. And that's one of the three principles that I shared at the beginning of the class. That's in the document that's linked here is that for us to feel good creating, we need to create within our comfort level. And it's one of the problems that I have with jazz education is that the story you're telling me is the same story I experienced. Well, we're going and we're trying to be creative over some material that we're not comfortable with.
I have this all the time with this jazz ensemble, because they say, okay, we're doing something. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, let's do something else. Oh, and we could do another thing. And then for the next time I'm there and I have 3 or 4 things. And then I'm asking them in the group, what are we going to do? So I can practice it. But it's always too much material for me. And then I have to do a solo and I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm quite good at when I'm looking at the chords, and so I can know what I have to play. But everything is so fast. And then, of course, there's the whole question of the rhythm, which I don't get when I'm like nervous or stressed.
Yeah. And this is one of the fundamental lessons that I'm trying to make with this training, is that we separate creativity into one situation, and we separate learning into the other. And the example I gave where I crashed and burned playing Cherokee in fast tempo was exactly the same thing that you are putting yourself over and over, which is a form of torture.
No, but I would go that far. But anyway, yes, but it's the only way I can be learning with these people. I think I have to look for something else or someone else, for other people who play the violin or another stringed instrument, to play together, because I did a workshop in the summer and it was only violin, viola and cello players in a little small group, and we did what you teach as well, no? The accompaniment and taking solos, and that was much more fun, really. Because first the problem of the violin got recognized and we got like technical advice. And then, I don't know, it's a different form of teaching.
The academy classes that I do now is multiple classes every month where you can come and you can be unmuted or you can be muted, and you just play along to my prompts. And I ensure that everything is set at a level where you're comfortable.
Yeah, I wanted to do this accelerator, but the time is not good for me in January. And in December, I have too many other things to do. So I'll wait and do it another time, maybe.
You can do the academy, though, that you can start that now, because we have classes all the time.
And I see next year if I have the time. So I think it will be worthwhile, because otherwise, yeah. Okay.
Ruben, do you have your? No, you don't. You're going to call me. We already discuss that. But what she's talking about, Petra, I think definitely relates, hopefully, for Marlene, because if we're always setting up ourselves to do something that we're not comfortable with yet, it's just re-traumatizing ourselves. I went through that for a long time. And even now, like with the example I shared playing on the fast tune the other day, it was just like, I'm at a better place emotionally where I could be like, okay, that was a mistake, but whatever. So what? People saw me made a mistake, and I was able to deal with that. But if I wasn't at the place that I'm at, it would have been worse. Sharon or Alan, do you guys have any questions? Or anybody else have any other questions?
I don't. I'm being a bit cheeky even by being here. I don't know enough to have any questions. I play with a string ensemble. I play the viola. But then about 8 weeks ago, I bought a violin. I bought a violin, but really to play Irish trad. And I've seen you had done something with St. Anne's Reel with not just playing the melody. And here in Ireland, trad pretty much is just playing the melody, and I want to bring another level into it. And we've got a trad group starting a learner's. I played the violin as a child for 6 or 8 years, so I'm not a total beginner. And I love the blues. And in our string group, we have a double bass player. And I said to him one day, why don't we get together and do some blues? And he said, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to do that. And then he looked at my viola and he said, but what instrument are you going to play? And I said, the viola. And he said, oh, but I think the viola is great on the blues. So I said, I don't really have any questions, but that's where I'm at with all this.
Thank you. Where do you live?
The west coast of Ireland.
Okay. Yeah, because the reason I asked that, because it's funny, right? Like people othering you for being a viola player and talking about the blues, but they live in Ireland. There's any irony of that? It's the blues comes from, as far as I know, the blues comes from African American culture, and so it's like
exactly.
You're people over in Ireland being like, "What? You don't belong in playing the blues," and they're like, "It's like we either do or we don't." It's let's not other everybody.
And I grew up in New York City, and lived all over the States before moving here. But yeah, I just love it. There's hardly any kind of music that I wouldn't want to play. But the blues and trad and some classical on the viola would be it now.
And that's part of the reason that I incorporated the bonus play along classes for people that paid, I don't know, $7 or whatever. If you paid $7 or whatever, you get like some extra play along classes. So I just want to make sure that you see that that is another thing that I offer, which is showing you how to understand, play along with these forms where you have to learn them and stuff. And so just to be clear, Petra, that's something you can do even if you only have 1 hour a week. You can join the academy. You can play along with the replays. It's something we've changed in the last 10 months. So I just want to make sure it's
No, I understand. I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you again, because it's now clearer for me that I have to look for other places where I can play with other people in a different setting. I'm going to continue this group, but maybe look for something else. It's much clearer to me now. And thank you.
Yeah. And so for Sharon, check out, if you got that bonus, play along. All you have to do is push play and then play along. And I do definitely address the questions you've asked about. Like I have lots of more replays in the academy too, if you want to try it for a month or whatever. Like I've done Celtic tunes where, and blues and all that stuff. So like those topics, like I create stuff for that all the time.
It sounds great for me. I am looking into it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Marlene, it's just to give you that nudge. It'll be like, if you're like, what do I practice? Or what, then maybe you don't need it, because you can do these improvisation exercises every day for 5 minutes. And just like what Petra courageously demonstrated for us. I don't know if everybody gets it, but her doing those half notes, like to me, that's enough.
Yeah, no, I'm totally committed. I'm not like nervous. Even I honestly didn't even know there was a session right now. I just saw it on the corner. Oh, that's the only reason I didn't bring anything to play, but I don't mind playing. Like I'm actually excited about it. So I'm looking forward to just do it. The only reason I saw your email is because I was going to sit down to go through the actual material. And then I saw you were on. I'm like, no, I better just come and see what's happening. But no, I'm excited through it. I'm looking forward, and I'm glad I caught a little bit of the live session at least.
Cool. Great. Cool. Everybody feel free to reach out to me if you have anything else you need. You can know where to find me on the email, but thanks for being here today. I appreciate you all. And Ruben, call me in about half an hour. All right. Take care. See you.